development of new types of housing in between. And this is essentially what we call aging in community. I'm not going to go through all of these different factors that I think are driving these housing trends, other than to mention changes in household. The fastest growing household in the United States. Anybody take a guess? Fastest growing population? 85 plus. It's the fastest growing segment of the population. Fastest growing households, single households. Because of divorce rates, because 1 in 5 baby boomer women did not have children. We have a new social phenomenon on the horizon. We've never had so many people living by themselves. And for many of them, 2 or 3, 5 years into it, they're beginning to realize, this isn't even really what I want. Next one, please. So in the first 10 years of this new millennium, we've seen some trends already. There's magazines out now. There's 3 or 4 magazines out now about simplifying your life, simple living, how to reduce all that stuff down to a manageable size. And this is in part coming out, again, for a lot of complex factors, but I want to note this concept of the rise of the cultural creatives. There is a concept that Richard Florida and some of his colleagues developed that said, we're evolving our thought processes about what's important. And how that has resulted is in a whole new thinking of what we are doing in terms of building communities. So for instance, Stapleton, I'm not sure what the equivalent of that would be up here in Fort Collins, is one of these new traditionally designed neighborhoods where you've got the front porches and you've got the opportunities for informal social interaction. And a lot of these are essentially what we call master plan communities. What's interesting about Serenbe, Georgia, is they have taken great thought to back it up to open space and to create multiple pathways for affordability, as well as what people's interests are. So, for instance, there's an organic farm, there's an artist community, there's a health and wellness community, and it all kind of centers around this central hub of the township center. Active adult communities. We don't even know. I've tried to speak with those powers that be in the National Home Builders Association, and because of different requirements by different states, we really don't know how many of these are out there. I can tell you this, I'm really concerned that we are growing old age ghettos. One of my inside jokes with some colleagues is, how many active adults does it take to start caring for one passive elder? And what I mean by that is that eventually what is fun and exciting when you're 55 to 75, maybe 80 if you're in really good health, and being, quote, active, isn't the same after 80 and 85. And we've seen this a lot in Florida, where you have huge communities. They don't care about the golf course anymore. What they want to know is, can we get an on-call nurse that lives on the premises? And in places like the Villages, this takes up 3 counties. And they have isolated themselves from the rest of the community. They've created some political friction that I'm really concerned in 30 years what's going to happen to the Villages, because it requires a balance of, quote, young old and old to make it work over the long term. One of the things that we're seeing that I think is kind of exciting, and I think would work well in Fort Collins, is this concept of retrofitting existing communities. The N4A, the National Associations of Area Agencies on Aging, in partnership with Livable Communities, have done a lot around this of providing technical assistance for ordinary communities to figure out how they're going to prepare for an aging population. And Dunedin was one of the ones that won an award just a couple of years ago. The other is on a smaller scale, looking at apartment homes and naturally occurring retirement communities, even in neighborhoods, to see how can we bring in social support services to help residents stay in their homes and equally important, connected to the larger community. Beacon Hill Village, someone mentioned earlier. I was at a conference of theirs in Denver, and there were maybe 50 people that showed up, mostly from Denver. In October of this year, I went to one. There was well over 200 people from around the country. This is taking off like wildfire. There's about 2,000 different village concepts now around the country in different levels of development. I forget who I'm clicking at. Senior cooperatives, I think, is another really interesting idea. Parts of the state of Colorado are very rural, and a naturally occurring retirement community special support program, for example, requires high density to make that model work. So what other housing options are we going to come up with for our rural community? And because so many rural areas are already familiar with a cooperative, a farmer's cooperative, where you bring all your corn into the same silo and weigh it and send it out on the train, this is an idea that has great appeal. You own your own unit. But you're part of a neighborhood that provides, like a NORC, special support services to help you stay in that new home. Another trend that we're seeing is something that's called co-housing. Some are intergenerational co-housing, some are for just older adults. I think the intergenerational model is going to have greater sustainability. Again, I worry anytime you cluster older people together, over time, in the beginning, I think it works really well, and over time, how many healthy people is it going to take when you've got really frail people there that need support and help? Because the concept behind elder co-housing is this is the last place you're ever going to have to live. And I'm looking and trying to help people to see how do you bring in social support services and health services to make that model really viable. Burbank Seniors Artist Colony is at the lead of what I call affinity group housing. This is everything, well, started like with, back at the turn of the century with the Masons and the Elks and the different civic organizations that designed their own home. If you were a member, you could move into. Now we're doing it around music, around art, around sports, golfing and so forth. So it's an amenity-based on common interest. And this won the 2005 National Home Builders Association Best Concept. It is a model that it's everyone from millionaires, from those that are very low income that only pay like $45 a month. Why it works among that diverse population is because everybody's interested in art. And so they're there to inspire and support one another. Rainbow Vision Properties in Santa Fe, New Mexico capitalizes again on this idea of affinity grouping. In this case, it's the GLBT community, which traditionally has been a hard fit in other assisted living, long-term care, living environments. And they have had great success since they have launched. There's about 25 others that I'm aware of that are going in around the country based on this same model. Hope Meadows is an intergenerational community that pairs low-income elders with families that have foster care kids with high special needs. And it essentially matches 2 elders to every family. It offers elders reduced rent in exchange for mentoring those kids. And what's been interesting here is it started about 15 years ago. Those elders that started in their 60s and maybe early 70s are becoming frail themselves now. And those kids whom they have mentored and helped are saying, how can we now help you? And they're actually in the process of fundraising to create something called Hope House, which will be an on-campus housing situation to continue to help those elders stay in the community that they've been in for the last 15 years.